The MVP award, though, was similarly difficult for me after the number one spot.
I kind of want to just go through my top five with no commentary, let you do the same, and then see where we don't align, in part because this is the one that we've been talking about all year. And like, I have a little discussion fatigue on MVP by this point in the season because so many conversations are centered around it.
I'm almost wondering, do we go through the top three? Because we know we're going to have the same top three. Because those are the three that have been pitted against each other, unless you went.
I did not go rogue.
Yeah. So what were 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah. So Trae Young at number one.
Okay. Obviously.
No, my number one remains Nikola Jokic. Number two remains Joel Embiid. And number three remains Giannis Antetokounmpo. And number four, Devin Booker has risen into that spot for me. And 5 is Luka Doncic.
We had the exact same ballot.
Cool.
Oh, no, we
Podcast
didn't.
over?
We didn't. Nikola Jokic was 1. Giannis is 2. Embiid is 3.
I was
Booker
really
was
close
4.
to making that happen too.
Doncic was 5. Steph, I had him in my last MVP ladder. I had him 4th. The time that he's going to miss, that's the thing that swung me, maybe more than it should, because I think people are continuing to underestimate his importance somehow, even when shots aren't falling. And we're sort of seeing how much him being absent has almost boosted his MVP case to me. But if I'm not going to have Ja Morant in here because of the time that he's going to end up missing, Curry has played more minutes than Ja. I want to make that clear.
Exactly.
But when Luka's going to wind up playing more minutes, everyone on this list is going to wind up playing more minutes than Steph by the end of the year. I had Steph 6, but that was what was tough. So let's start at the top here with the Jokic, Giannis, Embiid discussion. I'm done with, I've always been done, but like we gotta, the team record stuff, like it doesn't fucking matter. Like the Nuggets are 15 games.
Much less the where you sit in the seating in your conference.
Right. And by the way, the Nuggets, this is how ridiculous it is. The Nuggets winning percentage is 59.7. If you have a problem with him winning over Embiid, where the Sixers at 60.5, they have it's one loss that's separating them right now. And that's in part because Philly, as if this recording, has played fewer games. So I can't get there as the team record. I saw
even beyond that. I like looking at SRS, simple rating system, which weighs margin of victory and strength of schedule more anyway. And Denver is 11th at 2.36. Philly is 13th at 2.27. Milwaukee 7th at 3.44. So Jokic doesn't even really have the worst team argument to me, because not every win and not every loss is the same.
And it's just like, he checks every box. Like, he's gotten better on defense this year. He's still one of the most clutch scorers when you look at late in the shot clock, even specifically. Some of the most efficient scorers. Like, he's shooting, I think, better than 70% on drives this year, which is incredible because he's not finishing his drives all the time at the rim. His passing, just absolutely absurd. He is, look, he's missing 2 major pieces to the Nuggets. And I saw this going around on Twitter the other day. It's different situations, but the fact that the Nuggets are outscoring teams by more points per 100 possessions with Jokic on the floor than the Bucks are doing so with Giannis, that's actually, like, as an anecdote, impressive to me. It's not the end all be all case, but I actually had a harder time deciding between Embiid and Giannis because I can't come
right
up
there with you.
I don't know that I can actually come up with a case for having Embiid and Giannis over Jokic unless it's because of the impacts they have on defense, and Giannis specifically would be my pick there. If that's the route, I kind of get that a little bit.
And even then, like, Jokic's defensive performance has been so understated in a lot of conversations. He's not a DPOY candidate, but when you factor in the defensive, when you factor in the defensive rebounding, the game-saving blocks, the importance within the scheme, like, he's been a very good defender. I believe he's actually second in defensive Raptor per 538 this season.
Yeah, it's just, and he's dominating basically every single catch-all metric. That hasn't really happened except for Nikola Jokic. Like that, or excuse me, it's not that it hasn't really happened. That tends to happen for a reason, is my point.
And like with Russell Westbrook, when he broke box plus minus and therefore broke TPA during the 2016-17 season, he wasn't dominating every single one like Jokic is this year. And those, like all of the advanced catch-all metrics, they have different shortcomings. So when you're impervious to any of those shortcomings, that says something.
And look, there's a chance that the Nuggets are like, forget about the seeds, but like that Thunder team didn't win 50 games. They were 12 games under 500. This Nuggets team is probably going to win 50 games while missing for basically the entire season their second and third best players. I don't think that's a reason to,
Monte Morris has missed that much time.
What's that?
Monte Morris has missed that much time.
And that's not to detract or take away, depreciate the case of Giannis or Joel Embiid, who just had the Ben Simmons empty spot in the rotation. And I don't think James Harden's arrival has really hurt Joel Embiid's case at all. I thought they would just be, his teammate is too good. And that has not necessarily been the case with Harden. The Giannis versus Embiid specifically, that's what it came down to for me. I'm looking at the stuff that Giannis is doing. He has improved as a passer to the point where I'm going to trust him operating in those situations not way more, but more than Joel Embiid. There's a greater level of his offense is more dynamic than it's ever been. That's the best way for me to state it when you watch him. Coupled with everything he's going to do on defense, I think you can say that Joel Embiid is more of like that backline anchor, but Giannis can do everything on defense. And it's like, no, that's probably not his best position to be the backline anchor, but he's had to be for long stretches at a time. The stuff that he can still do away from the ball or just recover and bail out certain possessions is totally incredible. And it got to that point for me because the Bucks have been struggling at points this year. They've been up and down, their defense specifically. He seems just so mission critical to everything they're doing. We've seen Chris Middleton kind of go through it this year. The Bucks at times, the top of their roster just between Drew and Middleton has been better than a lot of what Embiid's been working with for most of the season without Ben Simmons before the James Harden arrival. But like they have their own, depth issues. They didn't have Brook Lopez for a ton this year. I'm ever so slightly giving the edge to Giannis. And maybe it's also because, look, the Bucks are now ahead of is it easier for me to say, yeah, the Bucks are second in the East and Giannis is the main reason why. He's done it with probably a little bit more help, but they are reliant on him just as much as the Sixers are relying on Joel Embiid on both sides of the floor. That was to me, there's a narrower gap between those two. Agreed. And Jokic is sort of not in his own tier, but that was an easier call to make for me.
I think what Embiid has done as a true center, as a scorer in today's NBA, is just ridiculously impressive. We haven't seen a true center win the scoring title since Shaquille O'Neal in 2001. And he has a legitimate chance to change that, especially if LeBron isn't healthy enough to play in the final games and doesn't meet the minimum games threshold and all that. But 29.9 points per game, 48.9% from the field, 36.4% on threes, 81.6% on free throws while taking 11.7 per game. And that's typically used as a knock against him. I feel the opposite, where I get the sense that officials have to change how they referee when Embiid is on the court because he plays such a ridiculous brand of offensive basketball that features so much finesse and so much physicality, again, much like peak Shaq, that you have to foul him to have any hope of containing him. I think if he got a fair whistle, he's averaging 15 plus free throws a game. So I would actually argue the opposite, where as much as it's pointed to as a criticism of his game that he's this foul merchant, yeah, because no one can stop him. And he should spend more time at the stripe than he already does. But the real growth that I've seen on offense from him, even beyond the scoring numbers, is the playmaking, much like Giannis, where all of a sudden he's way more reliable in that role and is making way more advanced reads. He's got the best assist percentage of his career by far this season, 24.2%. Previous best was 18.4 back in 2018-19. And he's coupled that with the lowest turnover percentage of his career, 10.9%, which continues the decline in that metric for the last 3 years. Previously, the biggest weakness, and maybe the only weakness in Embiid's offensive game, was that he could get caught along the blocks, along the baseline, by weak side defenders sneaking over, double teaming him, and he wouldn't know what to do and would throw the ball away or just have it wrestled out of his possession or knocked away. That doesn't happen this year. If you send that second defender, he's going to find the open guy and you're going to pay for it. He is just a ridiculously complete offensive player who is so integral to what that team does. And I don't think he has as much help over the course of the season as Giannis has had, because Tobias Harris has been disappointing all year. Tyrese Maxey, as much as he's improved, is not of the same caliber as Drew Holiday or Chris Middleton. And there is that empty roster spot that they had for most of the season until James Harden arrived in Ben Simmons's place. And then all of a sudden you have to adjust to this new ball dominant force in your lineup. And he hasn't skipped a beat. So his case is really impressive to me. I don't think that it comes close to matching Jokic's right now. Brian, I know you're listening to this, and I apologize. Please don't hate me more than you already do. But all three of these guys are so impressive. And I would just like to note that I don't think either you or I has said a single negative thing about any one of them.
No. And also,
I refuse to. I will not do that because I will not buy into that. We have to hate one of these guys to prop up the other.
The one thing that my total lines is I'll be interested to see if anyone picks either of them over Jokic. I'm just going to be interested to see what the case will be. And maybe I'll come away swayed. One thing to note too, this is why it was tough for me to put Giannis over Embiid a little bit, is Embiid has played more minutes this season than Giannis, which is just not something that you would ever expect to say. So it was tough. And so looking at the rest of since our ballots were the same, I have the definitive case for Devin Booker right here. And I do think that Chris Paul is more important to Phoenix's offense. Like he gives it its rhyme and reason, its shape, its structure. However, Booker has now played more. The Suns have played about 1,900 possessions when Booker with Booker and no Paul. It's about 1,400 when with Paul and no Booker. The Suns are outscoring opponents by 7.5 points per 100 possessions when Booker is on the court without Paul. This season, when you just look at his numbers when Chris Paul is off the court, I already mentioned that Phoenix is going to have that positive point differential, but Devin Booker has really still been like the heart and soul of that offense. He's seen his free throw attempt rate go up. We've seen a decline in sort of his efficiency from beyond the arc, but his 2-point percentage has still been adequately propped up. I don't think we give him enough credit for his passing, how purposeful and accurate it is to where the passes he's going to throw, even when the assist numbers are not like skyrocketing. And by the way, he's averaging 6.5 assists per 36 minutes without Chris Paul on the court, but maybe he's not throwing the same number of passes, getting the same number of assists, but the passes he is throwing matters. There's a scalability to his stardom. When you look at how much he will work off the ball in addition to on the ball, that I don't think other players of his caliber really have. And I do believe that he really solidified himself during the when he returned and Chris Paul was out with that hamstring injury. We're looking at it was a really big sample size when Chris Paul wasn't there. He shot better than 58% on twos. He shot 40.3% on threes, and he was averaging in those games. I don't know why I lost the number, but it was just an astronomical amount. And to maintain that efficiency, he was averaging 28.2 points per game, over 58% shooting on twos, 40.3% on threes, nearly 90% at the foul line while getting there at an admirable rate per 36 minutes. This is someone who is a full-fledged superstar. And there's a chance when you look at what happened to Morant and Curry, like he has a first team all NBA case. Like he should be on at least the second team. I'm reticent to say things like that. He should be on an all NBA team, period. Yeah. I don't know how positions are going to shape that, but the definitive case here is I think it's been clear, or at least evident if you look deep enough for a while, Devin Booker is so much more than Chris Paul's teammate. And it's really time, or Chris Paul's co-star. He is an independent superstar. And this is, would the Suns be as good without Chris Paul? Absolutely not. But if you took Devin Booker off this team, the Suns they are nowhere near title favorites. They are nowhere even near a contender. Devin Booker gives the Suns as much of their championship oomph as Chris Paul. And I do think this year, based on availability and maybe even scalability. And also Devin Booker has been one of the clutchest scorers in the league this season by efficiency. But I think that he, just based off the floor time and then maybe the scalability of his role, just like there being more layers to it than necessarily what Chris Paul has, where there's more of like a dominance to the way that Paul needs to play, particularly on offense. I think he's done more for Phoenix this season in that regard than CP3.
The only thing I'd really add is just aesthetically, watching Booker this year, it feels easy. It doesn't matter if he's putting up 49 points without Chris Paul in the lineup or 35 with him in the lineup. Even when he's taking these ridiculously difficult self-created pull-up jumpers against strong defenders, it doesn't even feel like he's breaking a sweat or operating outside the flow of the offense because he's just in this rhythm. And it's hard to get in that rhythm. It's even harder to stay in it. And he has stayed in it all season long.
Luka Doncic at 5. I wouldn't say a no-brainer pick.
No, I think that you can make good cases for Chris Paul, for John Morant, for Steph Curry. Maybe Jason Tatum. that's probably it.
And look, I know you could point out that Luka started the season slow. Steph went through his own slump. John Moran has missed so much time. And when you look at Luka's, streaky heater, it is spanned like 1/3 of the season at this point, which is like, that's like a normal. So Tatum is a good one too. This is
it was between him and Luka for this spot for me.
I think you can also, DeMar DeRozan was here for a while, and I had Chris Paul in the top 5 before his injury. So not a name that I would still put in the top 5, but my honorable mentions were Steph, Ja, DeMar, Chris Paul, and Jason Tatum. I think those are probably Jimmy Butler had floated around some discussions. Defensive player of the year and MVP were tough though. And those are, we should mention.
Thought about Robert Williams here.